Hello and welcome to my channel, Boo Snakes and More. Today we're going to be talking about John Wayne Gacy, so please like this video and subscribe to the channel. And for more videos like this, also watch my other house channel, A&A Snakes and Stuff. My youngest son's channel, Henny's Toys and Games, or my oldest son's channel, Little Chris 10. Now let's dive into the video. John Wayne Gacy, March 17th, 1942 through May 10th, 1994. Was an American serial killer and sex offender who raped, tortured, and murdered at least 33 young men and boys in Norwood Park Township near Chicago, Illinois. He became known as the Killer Clown due to his public performances as a clown prior to the discovery of his crimes. Born March 17, 1942, Chicago, Illinois, USA. Died May 10, 1994, aged 52, Statesville Correctional Center, Illinois, USA. Other names: the Killer Clown. Criminal status: executed by lethal injection. Spouses: Marilyn Myers, married in 64, divorced in 69. Carol Huff, married in 72, divorced in 76. Children: 2. Convictions: Iowa, sodomy. Illinois, murder, 33 counts. Indecent liberties with children. Divert, sexual assault. Details: victims, 33 plus. Span of crimes, 1972 through 1978. Country: United States. State: Illinois and Iowa. Date apprehended: December 21st, 1978. Imprisoned at Menard Correctional Center. Gacy committed all his known murders inside his ranch-style house. Typically, he would lure a victim to his home and dope them into donning handcuffs on the pretext of demonstrating a magic trick. He would then rape and torture his captive before killing his victim by either asphyxiation or strangulation with a garrote. 26 victims were buried in the crawl space of his home, and 3 were buried elsewhere on his property. 4 were discarded in the Des Plaines River. Gacy had previously been convicted in 1968 of the sodomy of a teenage boy in Waterloo, Iowa, and was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment. He served 18 months. He murdered his first victim in 1972, had murdered twice more by the end of 1975, and murdered at least 36 victims after his divorce from his second wife in 1976. The investigation into the disappearance of Des Plaines teenager Robert Priest led to Gacy's arrest on December 21st, 1978. His conviction of 33 murders by one individual then covered the most homicides in the United States legal history. Gacy was sentenced to death on March 13, 1980. He was executed by lethal injection at Statesville Correctional Center on May 10, 1994. Early life. Childhood. John Wayne Gacy was born at Edgewood Hospital in Chicago, Illinois on March 17, 1942. The second of 3 children and only son of John Stanley Gacy and Marilyn Elaine Robinson. His father was an auto repair machinist and World War I veteran, and his mother was a homemaker. Gacy was of Polish and Danish ancestry, and his family was Catholic. Gacy was close to his mother and 2 sisters, but had a difficult relationship with his alcoholic father, who was verbally and physically abusive to his family. The elder Gacy frequently belittled his son, calling him dumb and stupid, and comparing him unfavorably with his sisters. One of Gacy's earliest childhood memories was of his father beating him at age 4 for accidentally disarranging car engine components. His mother tried to shield her son from his father's abuse, which resulted and accusations that he was a sissy and a mama's boy who would probably grow up queer. In 1949, Gracie's father whipped him after he and another boy were caught sexually fondling a young girl. The same year, a family friend began to occasionally molest Gacy. Gacy never told his father, afraid that his father would blame him. Despite their challenging relationship, Gacy loved his father, but felt he was never good enough in his father's eyes. Gacy was an overweight and unathletic child. Because of a heart condition, he was told to avoid sports. In the fourth grade, Gacy began to experience blackouts. He was hospitalized on occasion because of these episodes. And also in 1957 for a burst appendix. Gacy later estimated that between the ages of 14 and 18, he had spent almost a year in hospital. He attributed the decline of his grades to missing school. Gacy's medical condition was never conclusively diagnosed. His father suspected he was malingering. On one occasion, he openly accused his son of faking as he lay in a hospital bed. Career origins. In 1960, at age 18, Gacy became involved in politics, working as an assistant precinct captain for a local Democratic Party candidate. This led to more criticism from his father, who called him a patsy. The same year, Gacy's father bought him a car. He kept the vehicle's title in his own name until Gacy had paid for it, which took several years. His father would confiscate the keys if Gacy did not do as he said. In April 1962, Gacy purchased an extra set of keys. In response, his father removed the distributor cap, keeping the component for 3 days. Hours after his father replaced the cap, Gacy left home and drove to Las Vegas, Nevada, with $136 to his name, in the hope of residing with a cousin. Gacy worked in the Las Vegas ambulance service before being transferred to Palm Mortuary. He worked as a mortuary attendant for 3 months, observing morticians and bobbing bodies, and occasionally serving as a pallbearer. He slept on a cot behind the embalming room, and later confessed that one evening while alone, he climbed into the coffin of a teenage male, embracing and caressing the body before experiencing a sense of shock. The experience promoted Gacy to return home. Shortly thereafter, Gacy enrolled at Northwestern Business College, despite having failed to complete high school. He graduated in 1963 and took a management training position with the Nunn-Bush Shoe Company. In 1964, the company transferred him to Springfield, Illinois, to work as a salesman, and eventually promoted him to department manager. In March of that year, he became engaged to Marilyn Myers, a co-worker. During their courtship, Gacy joined the local chapter of the JCs. That same year, he had his second homosexual experience. According to Gacy, a colleague in the JCs piled him with drinks and invited him to spend the evening on his sofa. The colleague then performed oral sex on him while he was drunk. In 1965, Gacy had risen to the position of vice president of the Springfield JCs and was named the third most outstanding JC in Illinois. Waterloo, Iowa, KFC manager. Gacy and Myers married in September 1964. Marilyn's father substantially purchased 3 Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurants in Waterloo, Iowa. The company moved there so Gacy could manage the restaurants, with the understanding that they would move into Marilyn's parents' former home. The offer was luxurious Gracie received $15,000 per year, the equivalent of about $153,000 as of 2024, plus a share of the restaurant's profits. Gracie opened a club in his basement where his employees could drink alcohol and play pool. Although Gracie employed teenagers of both sexes, he socialized only with the males. Gacy gave many of them alcohol before he made sexual advances. If they rebuffed him, he would claim his advances were jokes or a test of morals. His wife gave birth to a son in February 1966 and a daughter in March 1967. Gracie later described this period of his life as perfect. He had finally earned his father's approval. When Gracie's parents visited in July 1966, his father privately apologized for the abuse he had inflicted before happily saying, "Son, I was wrong about you," as he shook Gracie's hand. Waterloo JCs. In Waterloo, Gracie joined the local JCs chapter, regularly offering extended hours to the organization, in addition to the 12 to 14-hour days. He worked managing the restaurants. At meetings, Gracie often provided fried chicken and insisted on being called Colonel. He and other Waterloo JCs were also deeply involved in drug abuse, pornography, prostitution, and wife swapping. Although Gacy was considered ambitious and a bigot, the JCs held him in high regard. For his fundraising work in 1967, he was named Outstanding Vice President of Waterloo JCs and served on the board of directors. Assault of Donald Voorhees. In August 1967, Gracie sexually assaulted 15-year-old Donald Voorhees Jr., the son of Donald Edwin Voorhees, a local politician and former JC. Gracie lured Voorhees to his house with the promise of showing him homosexual stag films regularly played at JC's events. Heterosexual stag films regularly played at JC's events. Gracie plowed Voorhees with alcohol, allowed him to watch a stag movie, then persuaded him to engage in mature oral sex, adding, "You have to have sex with a man before you start having sex with women." Over the following months, Gracie abused several other youths, including one whom he encouraged to have sex with his own wife, before blackmailing him into performing oral sex on him. Gacy also tricked several teenagers into believing he was commissioned to conduct homosexual experiments for scientific research and paid them up to $50 each. In March 1968, Voorhees told his father that Gracie had sexually assaulted him. Voorhees Sr. immediately informed the police, who arrested Gracie and charged him with performing oral sodomy on Voorhees and the attempted assault of a 16-year-old Edward Lynch. Gracie vehemently denied the charges and demanded him to take a polygraph test. The results of these tests were indecisive of deception. Gracie publicly denied any wrongdoing and insisted the charges were politically motivated. Voorhees Sr. had opposed Gracie's nomination for appointment as president of the Iowa JCs. Several fellow JCs found Gracie's story credible and rallied to his support. However, on May 10th, 1968, Gracie was indicted on the sodomy charge. The most striking aspect of the test results is the patient's total denial of responsibility for anything that has happened to him. He can produce an alibi for anything. He presents himself as a victim of circumstances and blames other people who are out to get him. The patient attempts to assure a sympathetic response by dictating himself as being at the mercy of a hostile environment. "'Cause it's got a hole in it!" Section of report detailing Gracie's 1968 psychiatric evaluation. On August 30th, Gacy promised one of his employees, 18-year-old Russell Schroeder, $300 if he physically assaulted Voorhees. In an effort to discourage the boy from testifying in court, Schroeder lured Voorhees to an isolated park, sprayed mace in his eyes, then beat him. Voorhees escaped and reported Schroeder's actions to police. Schroeder was arrested the next day, initially denying involvement. He soon confessed to assaulting Voorhees, indicating he had done so at Gacy's request. Police arrested Gacy and charged him with hiring Schroeder to assault and intimidate Voorhees. On September 12, Gacy was ordered to undergo a psychiatric evaluation at the psychiatric hospital of the University of Iowa. Two doctors concluded he had an antisocial personality disorder. The clinical team, term for sociopathy and/or psychopathy, was unlikely to benefit from treatment, and that his behavior pattern was likely to bring him into repeated conflict with society. The doctors concluded Gacy was mentally contempt to stand trial. Conviction and imprisonment. On November 7th, 1968, Gacy pleaded guilty to one count of sodomy in relation to Voorhees, but not guilty to the charges related to other use. He claimed Voorhees had offered himself to him, and that he had acted out of curiosity. His story was not believed. Gacy was convicted of sodomy on December 3rd and sentenced to 10 years imprisonment, to be served at the Alamosa State Penitentiary. That same day, Gacy's wife petitioned for divorce, requesting she be awarded the couple's home and property, sole custody of their two children, and alimony. The court ruled in her favor, and the divorce was finalized on September 18th, 1969. Gacy never saw his first wife or children again. During his incarceration, Gacy rapidly acquired a reputation as a model prisoner. Within months of his arrival, he had risen to the position of head cook. He also joined the inmate JC chapter and increased its membership from 50 to 650 men in less than 18 months. Gacy secured an increase in the inmates' daily pay in the prison mess hall and supervised several projects to improve conditions for inmates, including the installation of a miniature golf course. He was presented with a Distinguished Service Award for his efforts within the inmate JC's chapter in February 1970. In June 1969, Gacy was denied parole. To prepare for his second scheduled parole hearing in May 1970, he completed 16 high school courses, obtaining his diploma in November 1969. On Christmas Day 1969, Gacy's father died from cirrhosis. When informed of his father's death, Gacy collapsed to the floor sobbing. His request for supervised, compassionate leave to attend the funeral was denied. When returned to Chicago, Gacy was granted parole with 12 months probation on June 18, 1970, having served 18 months of his 10-year sentence. Conditions of his probation include a nightly curfew and that Gacy relocate to Chicago to live with his mother. On his release, Gacy told friend and fellow JC Clarence Lane, who picked him up from the prison, and had remained steadfast in his belief of Gacy's innocence, that he would never go back to jail, and that he intended to reestablish himself in Waterloo. However, within 24 hours, Gacy had relocated to Chicago. He arrived there by bus on June 19th, and shortly thereafter obtained a job as a short-order cook. On February 12th, 1971, Gacy was charged with sexually assaulting a teenage boy who claimed that he had lured him into his car at Chicago's Greyhound bus terminal and driven him to his home, where he had attempted to force the boy into sex. The court dismissed this complaint when the boy failed to appear. On June 22nd, Gacy was arrested and charged with aggravated sexual battery and reckless conduct in response to a complaint filed by a youth who claimed that Gacy had flashed a sheriff's badge, lured him into his car, and forced him to perform oral sex. These charges were dropped after the complainant attempted to blackmail Gacy. The Iowa Board of Parole did not learn of these incidents. Gacy's parole ended on October 18, 1971, and a month later the record of Gacy's criminal convictions in Iowa were sealed. 8213 West Summerdale Lane. With financial assistance from his mother, Gacy bought a ranch-style house at 8213 West Summerdale Avenue in unincorporated Norwood Park Township, Illinois, part of metropolitan Chicago. He lived there until his arrest in December 1978, and according to Gacy, committed all of his murders there. Gacy was active in his local community and helpful towards his neighbors. He willingly loaned his construction tools and plowed snow from neighborhood walks free of charge. From 1974 to 1978, he hosted themed annual summer parties. These events were attended by up to 400 people, including politicians and business associates.